Hey guys, Ed from Paranormal Inc. Ohio here, back at it again with another podcast episode. Do I have a podcast episode for you guys tonight? Guys, listen to me. This is insane. I heard about this and then I watched this huge documentary on it. And there is just so much wackiness and craziness in this. I cannot wait for you guys to hear it. It is the Hinterkaifeck murders in Germany. Where there is murder, there is bound to be spiritual activity afterwards. So, Jesus, we're gonna jump right into this. Widowed Victoria Gabriel, she was 35, lived with her two young children, Kazila, 7, and Joseph, 2. Her parents, Andreas, 63, and Kazila Gruber, 72, and their maid, Maria Baumgartner, 44. I'm sorry if I murdered those names. I do not. I try my hardest to get the pronunciations right, but there's just a whole lot of letters. They kept very much to themselves in a lonely Bavarian homestead on the outskirts of town near the woods. Little did they know the farmhouse would be demolished, as neighbors could not bear the ghoulish reminder of what happened there. The neighbors had become concerned when young Kazilia missed school for several days. The entire family missed church, and their post piled up at the post office uncollected. A search party discovered that the bodies of the maid and the 2-year-old boy slaughtered in their beds. The rest of the family's bodies were found in the barn. They were stacked up, one on top of another, in the barn covered with hay. The injuries were brutal: smashed skulls, strangulation, shattered jaws, and gaping wounds, all caused by a mattock, something like a pickaxe. The 7-year-old girl was found with clumps of her own hair in her hands. Guys, she was, oh my God, torn out in a shock. She tore her hair out as she was being beaten to death. She survived for several hours after the deaths of the other members of the family. So this little girl laid in this barn by herself, dying next to her family members. Nearly 100 years later, the case remains unsolved, and the identity of the murderer is unknown to this day. Despite police interviewing over 100 suspects, not only was the crime as terrifying as any horror film, the more you look into the story, the more disturbing it becomes, as the killer is not the only bizarre and unexplained detail surrounding the case. Get ready, guys. 6 months before the murders, the family's farmer maid quit her position. Why? Because she feared that the house was haunted. After hearing footsteps and voices from the attic during the night, the new maid was murdered on the very first day of her new position. In the weeks leading to the attack, Andreas found scratch marks on the lock to the tool shed and a strange newspaper in the house, and the house keys had disappeared. He also found footprints in the snow that led into the house but never left. Nobody had been outside the house after the snow had fallen. On the 31st of March 1922, the killer somehow lured each family member to the barn, one by one. They killed them, all in the same way, a combination of strangulation and beating them to death. They then beat the maid, Maria, to death, and her death followed by 2-year-old Joseph in his cot. Now, perhaps even more disturbing, the killer did not flee the scene. The bodies were not discovered for 4 more days. One reason was that smoke was still coming out of the farmhouse chimney, making neighbors think that the family was home. The killer took residence in their home for several days after. This dude killed these people, brutally murdered them, and lived in their home for a couple weeks. They ate the family's food and even tended to menial tasks about the farm, such as feeding the animals and milking the cows. This dude fed their animals and milked their cows. If it was just one guy that did it, I don't know. 3 men investigated the farm. 4 days later, Lorenz I'm going to kill these names, guys. Schlittenbauer, Michael Pohl, and Jacob Siegel. They discovered the barn door open, revealing the horror within. Michael and Jacob said that Lorenz behaved suspiciously, seeming to be unnaturally calm and comfortable with touching and moving the bodies. The murder weapon, the mattock, again some type of pickaxe, was found 1 year later in the attic. There were multiple theories and many suspects interviewed in the aftermath of the murders. Some initially thought that Andreas had committed the murders and then committed suicide. There were previous allegations of domestic violence against him, but this was quickly disproven. By autopsy, it was impossible that any of the victim's injuries were self-inflicted. Yeah, how are you going to bash your own face in with a pickaxe? Hey, whatever. The case was quickly dismissed as a robbery gone wrong, as nothing of value had been taken. There was even money and jewelry left in plain sight. Here are the two most popular theories, and I'll let you draw your own conclusions. Now, just before I do this, these are the two most popular theories out of over 100 theories. Yes, 100 theories. Carl Gabriel, number one. Victoria's husband and father of her first child, Kazelia. Carl had been believed to have died in the war. However, there was a theory that this was untrue, that he had taken another soldier's identity to return home to take revenge on the family. Revenge for what? Victoria and her father, Andreas, were convicted of incest in 1915, which Andreas served 1 year and Victoria 1 month in prison. Not only this, the discovery of a second child to another man. Yeah, this is full-blown truth. I went way deep into this. That Andreas, the father, was having sexual relations with his daughter. She did not want it. She actually was the one that turned him in and still got blamed for it as well. So, yeah, he was having an affair with his daughter for quite some time. Why was this dismissed? Although there was no physical evidence of his death, as a bomb destroyed his body. There were witness accounts of his death in 1914. Number 2, Lorenz Schlittenbauer. You may have noted his strange behavior at the crime scene. He also knew the layout of the homestead and the location of things like the animals' food. The motive was obvious. He was believed to be the father of Victoria's youngest son, Joseph. He, however, was unsure of this. He claimed that Joseph was, in fact, the son of Victoria's father, Andreas. He refused to marry Victoria or pay her child support, as he was sickened by their incestuous relationship. He later accepted paternity and paid child support, yet continued to claim that Andreas was the father. It was well known that he and Victoria had many blazing rows. Why wasn't he convicted? Lorenz was asthmatic, and it wasn't believed that he would be physically capable of beating 6 people to death. He had not been spotted near the property in the days surrounding the murders. He was now married and had not been missing from his marital home at the time. But who's to say he didn't hire somebody? All right, here goes. It gets even deeper, guys. This is where it's going to get weirder. Upon searching the attic, police found not only the murder weapon, but also food scrapes. Yep. Tiles had been removed so that the family below could have been tracked. It is believed that the killer may have been living in the attic for a significant length of time. So this dude lived in their attic all this time. In 1923, only 1 year later, the farm was destroyed and replaced with a memorial to the victims. Because the paranormal activity was so intense that nobody could stay in there. All 6 heads of the victims were removed by the court physician and sent to Munich for further investigation. So yeah, they buried the bodies but kept the heads. While they were given to clairvoyants, they were given to psychics back then to try to find out what happened. All 6 bodies are buried without their heads. The heads were lost during the Second World War and have never been found. There was a big bombing in Munich, and they lost everything. In 1971, a woman called Teresa came forward and claimed that two brothers named Carl and Andreas committed the murders. She claimed this from overhearing a visit to her mother from their mother when she was 12 years old. Their mother later committed suicide by building a pyre in her kitchen, sitting in the middle of it and setting it on fire. This was dismissed due to lack of evidence and no connection between the men and the family. In 2007, this was reopened as a cold case using modern-day forensics. They have narrowed down their conclusions to most likely suspect, but have not made the confirmation public. They did not make the confirmation public. I cannot even talk. They can never be sure of the truth, as all suspects are now deceased. The Hinterkaifeck murders are some of the craziest unsolved mystery of the grisly underworld of true crime. This is because it is not a classic case of whodunit. There is a whole myriad of unanswered questions. Each question raises yet another question. Who would murder an entire family, including their innocent young children and their maid? And why? How was one person able to murder 6 people? How were they lured to the barn? Why did they live in the family home afterward? Were they living in the attic and watching the family for months before? Why? Who was the birth father of Joseph? Why did Victoria return to live with her father and family after the incest conviction? What was Victoria's mother's role in all of this? What happened to the victims' heads? Where are they now? Why were they given to a clairvoyant? What did the clairvoyant say about them? Why were the neighbors so quick to destroy the home? If it hadn't been destroyed, would it later have provided evidence to identify the killer? The further and further and further and further you dig, the further you are taking down the rabbit hole to the 100-year-old complex maze of the Warren. You will never find the hidden treasure, the answer that you are looking for. You could be forever lost in that maze, finding new twists and turns, not even realizing just how lost you are. All the while, the answers are buried deeper than you can dig. The murderer took that to their grave, and that's the craziest thing, man. Now, the paranormal aspect of this show is they gave the heads to clairvoyants, and we have no idea what the clairvoyant said. But then the paranormal activity that happened in the house afterwards, they would hear bumps, moans, groans, children crying, stuff would be thrown, things would fall down and break, doors would slam shut, everything else like that. They even saw apparitions of a little girl walking through the house, and it actually went to her first husband, Victoria's first husband, the Grable family. It went to them because his kid was the last one that survived. His kid was the one that stayed alive for hours and hours and hours out in that barn, bleeding to death. And so his family got the farm, right? And they were trying to keep it up and everything, but the paranormal activity was just so much that them and the neighbors decided just to destroy it and to put a monument there in memoriam to the people. So I hope you guys enjoyed tonight's episode. I had to do an episode on this. It was just, I watched it and I was like, get out of town. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I thank you all so very much. I love each and every single one of you for all the help, the love, the respect, the support, and everything you give to us. You will hear from us tomorrow night with another episode. Thank you. Bye, everyone.